After my last relatively mature video, it's time to swing in the complete opposite direction. I don't think it's revelatory to say that activists do not make very good writers. They're usually afraid of letting their characters struggle even a little. You're always just one video away from hearing this opinion, so nothing new has been said. Yet. But I say all that to say, the reason why so many of these modern day stories do not take off is because there is a fundamental flaw in how they approach their characters. Usually your character should start at the bottom or at a disadvantage at least and work their way up to prominence. That's how the Grand Theft Auto games did it, and it minted Rockstar Games a fortune. People love to overcome a struggle and will happily live vicariously through somebody else who manages to do it. If you want to start your story with a character who is already the finished article, who does everything effortlessly like Ray Palper Walker or Skypatine, I like Skypatine, or Captain Marvel or She-Hulk, or insert perfect character here, you have to take them through a different journey to make the story compelling and allow the viewers to relate to them. If your story starts, middles, and ends with a character at the same place of prominence, you've not created an arc. You've just wasted everyone's time. I had mentioned this in a previous video, but Thor had a great arc in the first movie. When the movie starts, he's strong, powerful, loved, celebrated, adored, and soon to be king. Seemingly perfect. But what sets his story apart from what I've just criticized with the Captain Marvels of the world is that he has the flaws of arrogance and hubris, which are not great qualities for a leader. He needs to be knocked down a peg so that he can build himself back up and become a better prince and man by the end. That's an arc. It's compelling, engaging, and allows you to root for the hero who suddenly becomes an underdog in spite of their initial prominent role. It's not rocket surgery to connect this to the very successful first Cars film, as it has a very similar plot. It's almost like the formula works or something. But aside from the formula, where Lightning McQueen is a high-flying racer with all the arrogance in the world, who accidentally gets dumped and lost out on an old country road, and must now work his way back and learn some lessons along the way, there are some really cool takes on this world that add some unique flavor to an established trope of a story. A formula that works is a formula that works, but you have to pepper in cool scenes and moments every so often that will make it memorable. Most men like shiny, fancy cars, so that's already a big foot in the door, but I'll just mention a couple of cool scenes that I really enjoyed that probably contributed to the success of this property. Besides all the colors and beautiful, intense animated races, there were the creative takes on real world things within this universe, like different cars representing different types and classes and races of people, based on who would frequently drive such cars in the real world, or celebrities like
I don't know what's harder to find, Lightning McQueen or crew chief who'll work with him. Lightning McQueen must be found.
Or the appearance of Mario Andretti, who was a legendary racer. They also had Hollywood parties, neighbors who did not get along, with visual designs that explained exactly what their differences were. Very cool. And the early 2000s super fad of modded out cars with boosters and neon lights like a Tokyo street. These guys were a menace. And let's not forget there were also animals. The tractors were animals for some reason. But by far my favorite thing was how they catered to the road trip crowd with this beautiful scenic visuals of animated Kansas, Arizona, and New Mexico inspired roads. I'm a big fan of road trip scenery, and you cannot have a real car movie without it. Now, I've heard a lot of people complain about how this whole movie world came to be. Who built it? The cars don't have fingers, so how did all this come to be? If you're asking those questions, we don't have time for your type of negativity, you hater. But they mentioned the phrase the manufacturer in the movie, so I suspect that was a cheeky reference towards a deity. But what did I like about it, and why do I think this movie is unfairly maligned? Quick summary if you somehow haven't seen it. Lightning McQueen is a young, arrogant racer who somehow gets lost out on an old country road while being transported to a race location to compete in the Piston Cup, which is the biggest, most prestigious race in this universe. At this point, all he has is his career, but with no friends whatsoever, which is something the movie makes abundantly clear. He ends up in some rural town called Radiator Springs where he messes up the road and is not allowed to leave until he fixes his mess. As far as the big shot racing world is concerned, Lightning McQueen went missing. So like Thor, who is stranded on Earth and needs to learn humility and a bunch of other good people lessons, he makes genuine friendships probably for the first time in his life and becomes a better car. As every person who values self-improvement, I want to say every man because I feel like a lot of the lessons in this movie were very targeted at a man's journey. I'll just say watching Lightning's discovery that he doesn't know everything about racing and the dedication he possesses to try and figure out how to get better at it is so relatable. And once he realizes that he has shortcomings in one area of his supposed expertise, all his other shortcomings start to rise to the surface. His redemption journey and the role that all the residents of Radiator Springs played were some of my favorite scenes in this movie. They made him better on his journey to fix what he destroyed, and he in turn revived the town back to its former glory. Win-win for everyone. He had one hater in town though, who was a former racer, there's always one, who got tossed out of the big shallow Hollywood-like racing world. Everything about Lightning brought back negative associations with his past, and thinking that Lightning was like all the rest of them, he tipped off the press to come and get Lightning once the road was fixed. The scene where all the vultures of the press and his racing team descended on him and forced him to say bye to his new friends or found family was really heavy. Without getting into my personal business, I've been there before, and having to leave a situation with people you care about so you can get back to the world where your profession is a really tough one. I don't get why people hate on this movie because it's one of the more realistic Pixar stories without the pretension of their other quote-unquote deep movies. Then we get to the big race and Lightning is not able to concentrate because of the way he left Radiator Springs, which already shows he has changed from the car we saw at the beginning of the movie. But when it looks like all hope is lost, he realizes that Radiator Springs followed him there. That's always a cool moment when you realize that the people you need the most are actually right there with you. And in one of the cooler redemption moments, Lightning McQueen's hater from Radiator Springs, who is now back in the racing world that had turned its back on him, does not go unnoticed. The crowd and commentators spot him, and I thought it was so dope how he was making his return as a blast from the past, who is seemingly passing the torch to the future of the sport in Lightning McQueen. If you're into sports, you'll understand what I mean. Feel free to explain that in NBA terms in the comments. But that was a really cool moment, and I enjoyed seeing the crowd finally giving him his flowers. And for my Formula 1 fans, the most memed scene from this film is one that I have replayed many times. When Lightning blew out a tire and needed to make a quick pit to change his wheels, the little Italian homie was being clowned by the pros, but he shut them up real quick. Who doesn't love seeing an underdog coming out on top? It reminds me of Susan Boyle on Britain's Got Talent. If you haven't watched that clip, you need to queue it up after this.
I dreamed a dream in time gone by.
She shut her detractors up real good and I love to see it. Put some respect on people regardless of what they look like. Until they give you a genuine reason not to. Then of course there's the scene where Lightning gets knocked off the track and he has to put into practice the lessons he learned back in Radiator Springs. All the staples of a great sports movie and the crowd goes wild! This race was so hype, it had everything. And then of course we get to the dramatic conclusion. Now I don't get emotional for almost any reason. I even wonder if something is wrong with me sometimes. But this scene? This one chokes me up every time. The final step in Lightning's journey towards redemption. This is the scene in Thor where he sacrifices himself to save everyone else and in the process proves that he is worthy. The only thing that had ever mattered to Lightning was winning the Piston Cup. It was completely within his reach, but seeing what happened to the other racer who was about to retire, which mirrored what had happened to his pit crew chief and former hater from Radiator Springs, he put aside his goal and did what was right instead. This sounds familiar. I feel like I've mentioned this before. Watching her up there, literally on the verge of tears, Charlie put his goal aside and decided to potentially make a fool of himself and save her from the embarrassment that she was about to experience. Maybe it's because he knew how it felt, or maybe he hated to see his sister cry, or maybe he was just being a good big brother. Whatever the reason for it was, he put aside his shallow goal of chasing popularity and rescued his little sister, ultimately making a fool of himself in the process. I'm a sucker for stuff like that. He gave away the title but won the hearts of everyone instead, and the actual winner of the race got booed out of the arena with his hollow victory. Then there was this scene as well.
Thanks, Lightning.
You're welcome.
Really wholesome. Lightning also got to keep his promise to his best friend in the process. I didn't mention this promise earlier in the video, but if you've watched the movie, you know what I'm talking about. And finally, Lightning uses his new status to hook the Italian homies up. He sends a Ferrari and a couple of Maseratis to his Italian friend's tire shop to get some new wheels. And of course, they faint in disbelief. Someone explained that in NBA terms in the comments. But Cars is such a dope movie, probably my favorite sports movie, just based on all the interconnected themes and moments that all get paid off by the end. Anyone who says otherwise is just a hater. Let me know your thoughts on this franchise as a whole and your favorite moments from this film, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Check out all the Pixar universe references during the end credits. Great movie.